An alien girl was left exposed, but I covered her and held her close. It was the kind of rain that stung. Kestrel Station's air recyclers pushed a constant mist through the market levels, and when the neon signs flickered, the droplets flashed like knives. I'd come for a replacement fuel valve and a hot meal, not a spectacle, but the crowd pooling beneath the broken holopod said otherwise. They'd formed a ring around a low plinth. On it stood a young alien woman, trembling, her pale skin latticed with bioluminescent veins that pulsed and dimmed like a dying heartbeat. An Orati, I realized. One of the river folk whose bodies needed humidity and a woven veil for modesty and warmth. Hers was gone, ripped away. She clutched her elbows, chin lifted because pride was cheaper than clothes. Shame settlement, a passerby muttered to me. Guild punishment. The guild master himself stood at the edge of the ring, a heavy-lidded reptilian in velvet sleeves. Witness the debt made visible, he intoned. Witness the thief. I don't know what made me step forward. Maybe the way her bio-lights shivered out of rhythm. Maybe the way the rain clung to her like accusation. Or maybe because I'd once been stripped of everything that kept me warm, and I remembered how the world looked from there. Enough, I said, shouldering through. Human, the guild master drawled. This is sanctioned. Not by me. I shrugged off my flight jacket, a patched, heat-lined thing that smelled of engine oil and cheap tea, and I wrapped it around her shoulders. She flinched, then went still, breath catching like the first gasp after surfacing. When she swayed, I did what any decent person does for another in a storm. I pulled her against me and held her close so she could borrow my heat. The crowd's murmur sharpened. The guild enforcers flexed their batons. This person is under station law, I said, loud enough for the nearest security cam. Article 17. Dignity of sentient persons. I claim sanctuary. Sanctuary is for emergencies, the reptile snapped. I looked at the woman's bare feet on wet metal, at her dimming glow. What do you call this? For a suspended breath, no one moved. Then the mist thickened, alarms hooped. The storm shutters were coming down, cutting the market into sealed compartments. Chaos does what chaos does. I took my chance, half carried her into a service corridor, and let the shutters clang shut behind us like a judge's gavel. We hauled into a maintenance alcove, the kind of place where old tools go to rust. I wrapped the jacket tighter and crouched so we were eye level. Up close, I could see tiny gill fans along her ribs fluttering too fast. I'm Jace, I said. I'm not with them. Her pupils widened and narrowed, storm-black. Nye, she managed. APPR, apprentice scribe. Trade tongue careful as broken glass. He said I fouls, falsify ledger. I refused. He tore my veil. Or not took. Humiliation. The Orati veil wasn't just fabric. It carried woven threads from riverbeds, family dyes, law-handled patterns. To rip it was to name someone outcast. I should have walked away. The smart thing would have been to find station security, file a complaint, let bureaucracy grind its slow gears. But I was already in it. The way you're in weather once it starts. Can you walk, Nye? She nodded. When I stood, she gripped my sleeve with long, delicate fingers, like kelp catching a boat. The storm made the station's bones groan. We navigated back corridors until we found an old rescue pod dock converted into a shelter, its emergency blanket still sealed in a crate. I spread one out, coaxed a heat unit to life. We sat wrapped in silver and my jacket, shoulder to shoulder, sharing breath like fugitives and friends. Thank you, she said finally. Her voice, steadier, had a music to it. They laughed. People laugh when they're afraid of looking at themselves, I said. Doesn't make them right. Her finger traced the seam of my jacket. Why help me? Because a stranger once pressed a cup of hot broth into my hands on a cold dock when I had nothing, and the steam had felt like a promise. Because decency shouldn't be rare. I settled for. Felt like the thing to do. She considered that answer with the seriousness of a scribe. Then I will write your name when I am allowed to write again. We stayed until the storm sirens eased. The market would be snapping back into its ugly routines. I unwrapped the blanket, rolled my shoulders. We need to get you a veil, I said. And we need to make the guildmaster very uncomfortable. Nye's glow brightened by a shade. He kept copies of the falsified ledgers, in case he needed to prove loyalty by destroying me. She tapped the side of her head. I kept a copy here. She pointed to a ragged memory stick woven into her braid. You're a dangerous apprentice. Only when forced. Good, I said. Let's force him. We didn't go to station security. They'd take a report and misfile it under tomorrow. Instead, we went to the public fountain. Orati would meet where water spoke, and Nye raised her hands and sang. It wasn't human music, not really. It was a call and response with the fountain's pressure valves, a whistle and hum that twisted through the pipes until distant Orati faces appeared at the periphery, wary, drawn. They saw Nye wrapped in my jacket and came closer, anger gathering like a tide. The guildmaster arrived with bluster and guards. So, he said, the thief and her human. Nye stepped forward before I could, her chin ablade. I am apprentice of Riverhouse Eiler. I kept the true ledgers. He ordered false entries to hide water tax theft. He tore my veil to make me silent. I jacked the memory stick into the public holopod. Numbers spilled like rain. The crowd didn't understand all the math. They didn't need to. They understood patterns. They saw minus where there should be plus. Water diverted from the river houses to the guild's storage. The guildmaster's smile cracked. The guards shifted, calculating how much they were paid and whether it covered this. You shame yourselves, I said quietly, because quiet carried. Shame settlements were meant to return what was taken. You took everything and called it justice. An older Orati woman pushed through, her veil a river at dusk. Her eyes found Nye and softened, then hardened as they flicked to the guildmaster. We will convene. The tribunal formed fast, the way honest things sometimes do, as if they were waiting their whole lives for permission. They questioned, cross-checked, translated ledger into water, water into hunger. The verdict came with the simple weight of truth, guilt, restitution, and the river house's right to reclaim what shame had stolen. Nye's new veil was woven on the spot. Women took threads from their own, humming as they worked, riverbed blues and reed greens and a thin line of silver like lightning. When they placed it over Nye's shoulders, her biolights flared whole. She turned to me, eyes bright with the reflection of a future. Jace, she said, and my name in her mouth sounded like a safe harbor. Faye, be witness, be friend. The guildmaster was escorted away, not by enforcers, but by people who had decided to stop being afraid of him. It was the only shackles he would feel for a long time. I realized I still hadn't retrieved my jacket. I reached to take it back and hesitated. It looked right on her, even with the new veil. The fabric had learned her shape. Keep it, I said. Humans, she teased, the first joke I'd heard from her. Always leaving offerings at rivers. Sometimes, I said and smiled. Sometimes we come back to see if the river remembers us. Nye's hand found mine. Her fingers were cool and certain. Then come back. There is much to write. A wrong to make a warning. A jacket to become a tradition. The market noise rose, ordinary and survivable. The neon rain had gentled to a mist that felt like blessing rather than blade. We walked side by side beneath it, her veil catching colors, my sleeve damp with new vows. She was no longer exposed. And when the wind kicked up, I did what I'd done at the beginning and would do again and again. I drew her close and held on.